Nervous about using public Wi-Fi? Imagine being able to turn yourself invisible to hackers on public networks. Having McAfee Plus is just like that. With the click of a button, you can disappear from hackers trying to steal your data and snoop on your internet activity. Browse, shop, and bank confidently, knowing your privacy and safety are protected. Get all-in-one protection with McAfee Plus and learn how to protect your everything at McAfee.com/podcast.
At Capella University, you'll get support from people who care about your success. From before you enroll to after you graduate, pursue your goals knowing help is available when you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
Welcome, everybody, to the Think Different podcast. That's right, we have returned for episode 47. We are only 3 episodes away from the big extravaganza, as we are going to have as many Apple employees at one time in 3 weeks' time. But meanwhile, we are here today. Will, the TLD, is here for another episode of the Think Different podcast. Make sure you are checking us out, not only here, but on our YouTube channel, because we are now going to have video versions of our show up there right now. We have last week's up there from the controversial episode of talking about the Apple riots and the Apple Store destruction that occurred, but this is going to be a happier show. It's going to be a funner episode, and we are back to our normal happy selves here. Well, let's get started, ladies and gentlemen, by introducing the man. His name is Mr. Frank Funk, and that's with no E at the end. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Frank Funk. Frank.
How are you, Will? Things going well?
Yeah, everything's kind of spinning back to normal. You know, we had 2 weeks ago where I lost my cat. We have, the riots happening. This week's been kind of like easier to deal with. And we have a fun topic to talk about today. We have 2 fun topics to talk about today.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I have done the most amazing thing for your life, because I am the inspiration to you, Frank. My inspiration is literally causing you to lose weight.
That's right. Well, I can't say it's you. It's more Tara. Okay.
No. She had a Rice Krispie treat today. Don't even.
Uh-oh. She's cheating?
Oh, she's cheating. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So I am the only man in this house right now that is living the keto lifestyle right now. But Frank, it has inspired you and your wife as well.
Yes.
And you're doing pretty well.
I am. When we started, I lost 18 pounds or so already. So
that's great.
And I started at 246, and I'm down to 230.
There you go. And how many weeks was that?
From May 20th to today.
All right. So that is about 20 days or so that you've been on it. So that's pretty good, Frank. That's actually very, very good.
And I'm telling you, I don't feel like I'm starving myself or losing anything. Really very pleased with it. You know, we feel full after each meal. We don't have as many cravings. And I think that's largely because we cut out that sugar. And, you eat one piece of something with sugar in it, and you just want another and another and another.
Yep.
And, we're really, really happy with it. And I'm glad you turned me on to it. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, man, anything to keep you living till you're 120 is my goal in life.
Yeah. So, how many WWDCs will I do if I live till I'm 120?
You'll be around for the iPhone 35, I promise you.
iPhone 35, yeah.
What's going on, sports fans? It's Chris Howard, host of Plugged In with Chris Howard. Got some news for you. BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs. Whether it's pro or college hoops, BetOnline has it all throughout the entire college and pro hoop season. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends you can follow all season long. So follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting, contests, and all the best player props. BetOnline continues to be one of the world's best wagering platforms anytime, anywhere, and you can follow from your desktop or your mobile device. So head to the website today and become part of this amazing team. BetOnline, the game starts here.
At Capella University, you'll get support from people who care about your success. From before you enroll to after you graduate, pursue your goals knowing help is available when you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
Well, speaking of iPhone, ladies and gentlemen, today we have to talk about the iPhone 4 because it was officially announced 10 years ago this week of this episode. But before we did, I wanted to start a new thing. I wanted to start a brand new thing that we are going to do, which is called the Apple History Product Release of the Week. That means it is the AHPROTW of the week.
We'll have to rethink that acronym,
No,
but yeah.
I think it's perfect. I think there's nothing better than the Apple History Product Release of the Week. Ladies and gentlemen, on June 11, 2012, the third generation 15-inch MacBook Pro was released. And what was significant about that MacBook Pro? Well, that is when we introduced the Retina display to the Mac. That's right, and it ties into the iPhone 4, which we're going to talk about. And we also made a standard of solid-state storage across the entire platform. This was my first big 15-inch investment of that MacBook Pro. I love that MacBook Pro.
Honestly, Will, I can't. I had a 15-inch as well, and in fact, I still have it.
How old is it?
It still runs. I don't know. I forget what the year was. It's probably 2012.
Wow.
Because it still had the battery underneath.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that one. This was the first time you couldn't remove the battery. This one. Well, you could. Technically, they had that feature. You could remove the battery. This one was impossible. This was the one where it was sealed down. This one also had that very fancy screw, or this plate that would hold down. That was in the 13-inch model where they had that special screw that held down that caused the power supply. So if we turned that screw while it was powered on, it would fry the board. That was on the first 13-inch model, but this 15-inch was the real deal. I think that was a humongous change from, and we're waiting for that another big change. Even though the 2016 model had the touch bar, really, and the USB-C, that was the last big change we had. So it took another 4 years to get a different model, but I think that model was great. Had a couple problems with the display though, with that peeling problem, but love that product nonetheless. Let's talk about the iPhone 4 anniversary. So this was a pretty big deal. This was a humongous change. I thought this, when you really go back and look at it, this was a tremendous phone. It really introduced a lot of things that we are now accustomed today of what we have. So, I mean, Frank, let's talk about a couple things. And what is the number one thing you think that the iPhone 4 has impacted to what we have today?
The high-def video. That was
HD video.
That knocked it out of the box. And with that, you had FaceTime was released.
Yes.
To me, that was a big deal. Big deal. They also had the advancement in the screen.
Yeah, the Retina display. That's where it ties into our first thing, where the Retina screen came out. And remember, Steve was on stage and he was explaining the pixels, and he's trying to educate people how pixels work. And he did such a great job for people who just don't understand that kind of technology and don't really get it. That was something that was really educational to everybody.
Yeah, I think Steve has to go down as one of the all-time best keynote presenters. I mean, it's as an Apple fan, WWDC is like Christmas for us. You just can't wait to see what's new, and there was a lot of secrecy around what was going to be unveiled, and that was the big thing, the big keynote, and And then, of course, some of his cliches. One more thing. There's one more thing. And he really knew how to draw people in to the product and to show them how beautiful and elegant these devices were.
I just really wish that, and I get it, Tim Cook is not Steve, and he cannot do the same things. But I wish he was presenting some of the stuff on stage. I know he doesn't know it; it's not his forte, but he should at least talk about something. But he really doesn't, and that's just because that's just not his field. But I wish he's got to step up, I think, and do something like that. What I'm surprised you didn't talk about was the leak that occurred with the iPhone 4. So now the story is that this was a Apple employee that had a demo iPhone 4 that was left at a bar that someone took, sold the phone, I think, to Gizmodo.
Yes.
And they published that entire thing of the iPhone 4 being released. So, of course, naturally, Apple had to go after Gizmodo for that because they have something in their hand that doesn't belong to them.
Yeah.
And the person, I believe, that stole that phone also got in trouble and didn't give it back to Apple. So there was a whole...
Well, did he steal it or did he just find it?
Well, he didn't give it back to anybody. So let's just...
Well, yeah.
To me, he stole it. I don't care what...
Well...
I mean, but he was smart. He sold it for Gizmodo. He probably made some money, but I'm sure Apple went after him. I don't know what happened, the ending result of that, but that was the big story. And, of course, during the keynote, Steve had to say something because it was very obvious it was given out. It was out there.
Yeah.
So when he revealed the design, he said some people may have heard of this, some of you may have seen this, which I'm great that he joked about it. You know, that was...
Yes.
You know, I wish we had more of that. I really do. I mean, but that was before rumor sites were really rapid, where we would see like examples. We see examples all the time now. I mean, honestly, we know what that phone's going to look like before it comes out.
Which in one respect, I don't like.
I know. I agree with you. I'm with you.
Only because it's like, well, like I said, it's like Christmas. You want to unwrap that gift, right? Mm-hmm. If you already know what you're getting, it kind of defeats the purpose. And
right.
I do miss that about that.
I do.
But it's always interesting because I look at the phone, which I think is misnamed at this juncture.
The number means nothing anymore.
Well, not only that, I mean the iPhone. To me, we've reached a point a long time ago when the phone was probably the least of the apps that you use on that device.
Right.
But
the brand is just too big. It's just impossible to change it. Like, people thought the iPhone 10 was going to become the Apple phone. That's when they thought they were going to start changing the name. But they have the Apple Watch. Like, they didn't call it the iWatch.
Right,
you know?
right.
So they implemented Apple, like Apple Music. Like they're changing. They changed iTunes to Apple Music, really. So they're adapting the change. And then the antenna design was really cool. This was when they had like three antennas. One that was like Bluetooth Wi-Fi, and one was like Bluetooth that was on the outside. We're going to talk about the issues with this phone a little bit later about what that ended up becoming. But the front-facing camera was a big deal. That was awesome that we had like a front-facing video camera. This is where selfies came in, everybody. iPhone 4 introduced the selfie camera.
Yep. Who doesn't like to take a selfie, right?
Oh, I love selfies, baby. I love looking at myself as much as possible.
Hey, listen, anytime Disney has to ban selfie sticks, you know it's a big thing, right?
So thanks to the iPhone 4, selfie sticks became a thing, everybody. And then we had the gyroscope, a small feature, but a big one, because that was now, with games especially, now it can react in the environment based on where you are. And that was a humongous add to the phone. It wasn't just tilt and pan. Now you can move it in 360 motion, and it can react. The whole phone could be turned 360 and it would show you the 360 of it. So I thought that was a bigger deal than most people thought.
Well, I think that's one of those things when people look at it like, I don't know what it does, but I guess it's cool, until they actually see an application that utilizes it.
If you remember, he showed the Jenga game. Jenga game.
Jenga, that's
Jumanji.
It,
No, he wasn't a Jumanji, okay? He did summon an animal through the iPhone, okay?
Yeah. Well, augmented reality, maybe you can in this version.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're getting there. We're at that artificial reality here, that AI coming in. But he would play the game of Jenga, and he showed how he moved around, and it reacted. So that was cool. The HD video, which you mentioned, but also specifically iMovie came out in there, which was great because now you have a video editor on your iPhone. I mean, who would have thought that? This is 2010 that came out.
Yep.
Like people today,
you make that sound like that was so long ago.
It is.
I mean,
10 years ago. Think about that. I mean, now I can edit a full wedding on my freaking iPhone, and I have. You know, so, and then you mentioned the biggest thing, FaceTime. That was, so if you remember, Steve wanted everyone to turn off the Wi-Fi because they were having problems during the keynote.
Yes.
In order for this to work, he had to get everybody off the Wi-Fi, and he had the FaceTime call with Johnny Ive, and that blew our minds that they had this technology because Skype was already around, but on this small device, Apple came out with it. Of course, they kind of took the feature from somebody else. They had like a lawsuit with FaceTime at the end of the day, I think, because they did take that from somebody else. But they really didn't develop it. But look at it now. We have group FaceTime. I mean, because of FaceTime, we now have Zoom. We have everything because of that.
Yep. It's, and they opened the API to everybody.
Yes, that is another important thing.
So,
explain that.
you know,
Explain that.
Well, Apple would develop particular applications or programs, and they would be closed, only be used within the Apple world. When they opened the API to any vendor or developer, I should say, who was creating something, they could use that API in calls from their program, and they would no longer have to write a whole bunch of code to do video type conferencing. It was huge. That's a very simplified version of it, but still, that's basically what it means.
Yeah.
You can attach to this piece of code that's already set for you. You don't have to do anything. You just have to make a call to it and an exit from it.
Yep. And that ties into iOS 4 that came out because iOS 4 was also released for this as well. And probably the biggest thing that came out was the multitasking, fast switching came out in that. So now we're able to go to a different app while other app was paused in the background. But then that also introduced people closing their apps all the time because they thought they were running in the background, which they weren't. You know, it was just a faster way. It was just a way to do that, and they were still able to maintain the battery life on that, which was tremendous. You had iBooks come out, the unified mailbox, which I love that feature, the unified mailbox, and then Game Center, which really didn't take off. That really wasn't anything great. But then you had custom wallpapers. I mean,
and you also had folders.
Folders, thank you. That is another very, very important one.
And people were like, well, what? And instead of scrolling from screen to screen to screen to screen to screen,
right?
You put them in these folders, and it's like, wow, that's really nice.
Imagine if we never had that till like now, we'd be freaking out going to 9 different screens. Now this phone had come without its problems, and we dealt with them because we saw them in the store. Overall, you had an iPhone 4, Frank?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had pretty much all of them.
Okay. What were your thoughts of the iPhone 4? If you go back in your memory of using it.
I thought it felt a little heavier.
Mm-hmm. It definitely was
thinner, but it was glass on both sides, very sleek looking.
Yep.
Just a very new design. Still had the 30-pin plug on it.
Yeah, we weren't out of that. Yeah, it took another 2 years for that.
Right. But, and then, like you said, you had the aluminum bands. Mm-hmm. Now, in the store, of course, they had a video for us on how this thing was made.
Right.
With the glass and how they, I mean, it's one of the things I admire about Apple products. And you know this better than I do, Will. When you take a Mac apart, it's not like you take a PC apart and there's wires all over the place.
Right.
When you take a Mac apart, whether
clean.
it's a portable or an iMac, you open it up and it's like...
How'd they do that?
Wow. It's like a place for everything and everything in its place. It's just beautiful.
Yep. It really is.
And the phone really epitomized that. They utilized every centimeter of space within that device.
Yep.
and they continue to be a work of art as well as a feat of great engineering.
And I opened Windows PCs, for a living when I had to take I did get to replace batteries sometimes on Windows PCs now, but really it's like you look at the design of the plastic. It's not it's not this arsenic free, everything free of design. It's definitely messier. It wires all over the place, especially desktops. It just doesn't look fun to open and go through. Where a Mac is like, everything is so perfectly clean, and it's a thing that you will not see as a user, but you should really appreciate.
The user definitely benefits from all of the unique and top quality engineering that goes into these products. Do you pay for that? Yes. You always pay for top quality products. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not to say that they don't have issues. Mm-hmm. They're not 100. Nothing is 100%, but less problems than you would have pretty much with anything else, and a better made, better quality product. And that's just, when I first got into Macs, people say, well, what's the big deal? I said, dude, they just work.
Right.
You turn it on, you imagine my surprise the first time I just plugged my printer into my iMac, and it worked.
Yeah.
I'm like, I sat there and went, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
This is the way it should be. This is plug and play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more the average person gets into technology, the more they take that kind of stuff for granted, rather than saying, how does this work? And not that you have to get into the real nuts and bolts of it, but if you have an opportunity to see the inside of a PC and the inside of the Mac, it's like night and day.
Yeah. One of the things about this iPhone 4 design, though, that didn't work out was, well, you couldn't just hold it exactly the way you wanted. And that is because of something called the death grip that came out. Now, we got this complaint a lot. Now, I just started repairing iPhones when the iPhone 3G and 3GS came out. So I was a family room specialist at this time when it was released. And the biggest problem we had to deal with was the fact that someone was holding this phone a certain way that was causing signal to completely go down. And this is a flaw. I really don't. Apple made a flaw here. And Apple's solution was, well, we have a bumper case we're selling for $30. Well, why don't we just give that away for free?
Yeah.
And that was a solution. But even if you gripped it and you still kind of held down a little bit, you still would have that problem.
So it's almost like you were acting as a lightning rod or something.
Yep. That was a humongous problem that, a lot of the reviewers found out over time. Now, they said they came out with an update to fix it, but that never worked at the end of the day. So, but it was a big problem. Only really in the beginning it was a big problem. And we had to educate people how, you should probably put a case on it. Which is kind of sucky that if you really don't like a case, well, then you're not going to be able to make calls. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big thing. And then the other thing was the glass itself. Now, remember, the glass, the way this phone was built, the only way to open the iPhone was from the back, not the front. So that means that the front was held down with this adhesive glue. But because if the phone got hot, you would get this yellow streak coming through the screen. And that caused a problem because, obviously, where'd that come from? Well, that's the adhesive glue that would hold down the display. And the display was not replaceable in this phone. And that was a humongous problem.
So, I mean, although it was very innovative, it's also used as a learning tool for future phones.
Yes.
These are the things that they had to improve upon.
Well, I think it was dumb that they offered screen replacements for the 3G and the 3GS, but they didn't offer it for the 4 and the 4S because of the way they built it. And it was like annoying. So the back glass could be, a lot of people have their black glass cracked and they just put a case on it. It was $29 to replace it. There was no point in doing that. But that was a big flaw in this phone. People just reaction when I said, well, you cracked your glass, you have to replace your whole phone. It was $149 at the time, or $109 at the time. It was just crazy. Yeah, so people didn't like that. And then the biggest problem was the sleep button. That got stuck a lot. That was another one that I would say happens a lot too.
Yeah, either of those issues I never had, and I don't know if I'm, unique. I don't know.
You're definitely unique.
A lot of these things I don't experience. Like like you were saying a couple episodes ago about Catalina. I've had Catalina. I've got the update. I don't have any problems. Right. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just lucky. I don't know. Or maybe I just don't utilize the operating system to its fullest. Or I just didn't have a death grip on the phone. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, when you did it and you held down tight, it definitely happened. There was no doubt about it. But reality is you don't do that. And not to mention, I had a case on mine, so I never had to worry about it.
Right.
Right. So, oh well, so sad.
I often wonder there are people out there that just spend their time trying to figure out what's wrong with the device instead of enjoying it.
So sometimes I could see your reason on that, but I also understand why people would be pissed. Because if you're spending so much money on these phones, and back then you're paying subsidized pricing and you're paying like $30 extra a month to the carrier, you're really spending $1,000 on your phone. It can't have that problem out of the gate. It really can't. Antenna gate was a big deal, I thought, when it first happened. It really was. Now, what was interesting with iPhone 4 is we had a newer iPhone 4 came out, the CDMA phone, which is the Verizon iPhone 4. Now, remember we had this big launch. We had the red balloons. We had everything going, and there were 8 people in the front of the store waiting for that phone.
Yeah, and they were big lines.
Yeah, I mean, iPhone 4 lines were nuts, but when the new iPhone came out, the iPhone 4, we thought this was going to be a bigger deal. And it wasn't. It ended up becoming no lines were really around for the Verizon style phone. They thought it would be bigger than what it was. It wasn't. Yeah. But now we had the two major carriers had an iPhone, and that just, the launch of that, I thought was just embarrassing for Apple that they expected all these big lines and everything, and then within an hour we were done.
Well, if you think about the way business is done today and the way it was done then, essentially. You wanted an iPhone, you had your two choices. You went to the carrier, and at that time it was only Verizon and AT&T, or you came to the Apple store. Mm-hmm. And,
and buying it online was not easy, and activating was not easy.
And so during the launch, I remember at Freehold, well, you were there, they had all the phones at the Genius Bar, and you asked them what they wanted, you went back and got it. And again, it was black, white, 16 or 32. That was it. Yeah, that was it.
That was it. 4 SKUs. And, that was it.
And I mean, not that was a bad thing, but that portion of the transaction went fast. Where the bottleneck became was in the setup of the phone.
Yeah, activation.
Activation.
That was always a big deal. We all know the iPhone 3G times when that happened. Oh my God, was that the biggest nightmare in Apple store history?
Well, it brought the server down how many times?
Brought everything down. Yeah. iTunes and AT&T were both down, and no one could activate a phone, and people were literally there for 4 to 5 hours calling AT&T support. Oh my God. And that's when we started having AT&T physically at the stores now, to help with these kind of things. So they were right there, which was great, for us, because that was so much more helpful to have AT&T staff.
Because who wants to hear, staff. Well, that's not really our problem. You have to contact your carrier. Nobody wants to hear that.
Yes. Yeah, imagine that today.
Yeah.
I don't know how people can handle that today, but that's how it was back in the day. And you talk about waiting in long lines. You could reserve, back then I believe you still could reserve your phone and get it. And then, of course, you had people who were just waiting in line just to get it. And these lines were crazy. In fact, I'm going to show a video right now on our YouTube side that shows that.
Well, go ahead. I can remember we would... When we were working the lines, we would ask people, okay, what do you want? You want the Verizon, you want AT&T, 16 or 32? What color? And we would give them a little ticket.
Card. Yeah,
and
card, yeah.
the back of house would constantly keep the inventories up to date, and when you ran out, you ran out.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
And of course, we always had and a little tidbit. Apple does keep a bunch of phones on the side just in case the phone that they open up
Yes.
doesn't work. So they always have, even though we're sold out, do we still have a couple? Yes, and that is because we have to make sure that someone didn't get a phone that broke and they bought it. You know, and then the return process. Talk about that. Like, if you had to return something and rebuy it back in the day.
oh, Will, I think maybe at this juncture, why don't you explain, you being a genius, you explain to folks that are listening, when you give someone a replacement phone, and I'm sure you always got the question, and I always got the question, well, is that a phone that was returned? So could you
Right.
explain that process? Because it's not a phone that was returned.
Yeah. So in Apple's contract, if you read, and we did this a couple episodes ago, we read the entire terms and conditions. So look back in older episodes, we talk about that. There's something called a like new condition. That was the terminology of that. It's changed over the years, where we went from refurbished we went to what was the other word? What was it? Not refurbished.
Well, just a replacement.
Something.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a replacement, but we used a different term. I never said the word refurbished. I always said it's a like new, and like new means that there are parts on the phone or even on the computer that are always new. So an example: display, battery, shell, all like the actual shell of the phone are always new on every phone. Internally, there are parts that may have been reused. It could be a vibe motor. It could be the actual logic board itself, the A4 chip, specifically in this case with the iPhone 4. And that's really it. So they have to say that because they can't say it's a new phone. You're not buying it new. It's no different than when you go to a mechanic and you're getting maybe a like new condition product. So refurbished to me is a used phone. You know, that's what the word refurbished means. At least I mean. If you were to have a plan with AT&T, they would likely send you a refurbished unit. It means that someone else used this phone before you got it. There's a used battery in there. There's a used screen in there. There's used everything in there. Where Apple would not do that. They would give you a phone that looks, no scratches are on it physically. The battery is 100%.
No one else's ID in it.
No one else's ID in it, which we have run into with AT&T, or like when they use Asurion, which is the company that does supplies these. They do a terrible job because they give you phones with third-party displays, used batteries, third-party batteries in it. It's bad. Like, I would never, ever, 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 ever tell someone to go to Asurion for any product, anything.
Yeah.
You know, screw them. They hurt the customer's experience. They hurt us from the Genius Bar. So again, Apple will never give you a new phone, but they will always give you a like new condition phone. And I will give you a hint. Phones that are manufactured today, if you were to go into the store and get an iPhone 11 changed out because of an issue, that's likely new.
Right.
You know, there's no such thing as reused parts yet for that. So it's only phones that are older that are no longer manufactured. So I hope that explains that.
Yeah, I know a lot of people always have that question, and I thought, well, it would be a nice time to bring it up.
I hope Apple doesn't sue me for anything we're talking about, but one man did sue Apple for $1 trillion, which you can see right down below. That's why we have the dollar bill below us. There's a $1 trillion bill right below us,
Yes.
Frank. So let's talk about this. A man has filed a court case against Apple in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri for $1 trillion, which, by the way, Apple just became a $1 trillion company. Let's just.
And this is your favorite iPhone, too, the iPhone 7.
Yeah. Well, his claim is that the iPhone 7, which he had given to Apple for repair, had new features which helped Apple in the creation of iOS 12.
So he's saying that my interpretation of that is he jailbroke the phone,
I'm
coded some
assuming
new
he did.
stuff, gave it into
Yep.
Apple for repair,
Yep.
and Apple said, "Hey, this stuff's pretty cool," and they used it. Now, I don't know how you would prove that.
And then he owns patents, by the way, for iOS 12 and iOS 13 because his phone had new features and he should be compensated accordingly. We're going to do this every week, by the way. We're going to find a lawsuit that Apple has and probably find the most ridiculous story. I think it's fun to have these ridiculous stories. And by the way, this is not the first time he's done this. He previously tried to sue Apple for $2 trillion in 2013. As per Apple Insider, the lawsuit also included $900 on top of the true million as rental costs for Apple keeping his iPhone 7.
Wow.
Of course, it was dismissed in 2019, but a new date has not been set for this phone. So, ladies and gentlemen, Frank, your thoughts?
Well, when you're at the top of the food chain, and you're $1 trillion
You deal with
company,
idiots like this guy.
that's the first thing people say. Hey, you got a problem? Sue them. And
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course. Like, Frank, I'm going to sue you for losing weight because you stole my
yeah,
idea.
that's right. That's right. The thing.
This Rayvon Terrell Parker is a moron, everybody. So I just want to let you know, if you find his Twitter, just let him know I said that. Maybe he'll sue us.
It's amazing because it's like, unfortunately, the reality of the situation is that a lot of major corporations, rather than take this thing to court and drag it out for years or whatever, just say, you know what, you give him some money and he'll go away. But then in this case, he went away originally, took his money, went away, now he's back,
Yep.
So, I don't know. To me, I don't know. It's just not something that I would
Now,
do.
I get it. The iPhone 7 sucked, guys. I mean, I get it. I understand why, if anybody's sued for an iPhone 7, I get it. Not for this, though. The fact that he broke the agreement. Okay, so let's get this straight. So he broke the agreement.
Yes, and based on that, Apple would not have to, A, fix the phone, and B,
Right.
they, I believe, would not even have to give him the phone back.
Right. Now, this is the statement of the claim. On October 19, 2018, Rayvon Parker went to the Apple Store in St. Louis, Galleria, for a malfunction with his cellular device. The attendant in the Apple Store fixed the device, but kept it by deceiving the plaintiff, knowing that it was the first phone to have new features. What? I'm reading this and I sound like I'm an idiot.
Let's think about this now. You're the person that added new features to this phone. You bring it into the Apple Store, and I am smart enough to know that this has new features of some kind. And so I think I'm going to dupe you, the person that created those new features, by giving you a phone that doesn't have those features.
Right. Now, I hope that the person in the store deleted the phone, which we do every time, by the way, now, because things like this can happen.
Okay.
So imagine if they have no proof that phone got deleted. Well, then, then they're going to say, well, why didn't you delete that phone? You're supposed to after every time. Yeah. So you're going to have that. And then the damages that the plaintiff is seeking is $1 trillion due to hospitalizations, travel, distress, humiliation, embarrassment, defamation of character. I don't think that the plaintiff can be compensated for being labeled crazy. That's what's written in this lawsuit. Everybody, this is a public knowledge, by the way. I don't have
it's amazing.
And of course, do you think he has an attorney, by the way?
Yeah, either he may be an attorney or he has a good one. That's
okay. Okay, I'm going to ask you: do you think there's an attorney assigned to this? Without knowing, do you think an attorney is on this?
Absolutely.
No, there isn't actually.
Really?
Come on, Frank. You really thought somebody was going to?
Well, especially if you work on.
He has no attorney. He has no attorney filled out for this district court. There's no attorney. He's doing it as himself.
I mean, you figure as an attorney, right? If you get
not for $1 trillion, Frank. There's no way. The company's only worth $1 trillion.
But if you figure an attorney would say, well, I get a third of whatever he gets. So they have nothing to lose.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is what happened this week. Yep, that's right. This guy is sued for $1 trillion. So, well, that's our episode for this week. We thought we'd take a dive down to history with the iPhone 4, talked a little bit about the MacBook Pro, and then, of course, this moron that sued Apple for $1 million. Or, no, I'm sorry, $1 trillion. I should correct myself.
Yes.
Frank, make sure that you are... Did you leave a 5-star review on our podcast? I'm going to question you, but you make sure that you definitely leave a 5-star review. And check us out on our Twitter and our Facebook page. We do post articles throughout the week, and we publish them on there. Check out our Instagram, @ThinkDifferentPodcast. On Twitter, it's @ThinkDiffPod. And, of course, this YouTube channel where we have all of the episodes. So now episode 47 is a video version up there, not edited, so it's actually kind of all the way if you want to watch the whole thing all the way. Enjoy the videos there. Frank, do you have any parting words for our Apple people this week?
Well, actually, I do. I have a friend of mine out in the Midwest that I talked to about our podcast. So he's a junior at the Iowa University. So he's going to get his contingency out there to start listening to our podcast. So hopefully things will pick up for us out in the Midwest. And he has a podcast. It's called the Cooksley Convo. So if you folks want to give it a listen, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, I hope we got paid for that plug.
Oh, yeah.
We hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. We enjoy bringing it to you every week. And remember, episode 50, our plan is to get as many Apple employees on one podcast at the same time so that we can just talk about Apple and all of our journeys throughout it. I want to thank you guys for joining us once again for another episode of the Think Different Podcast. Now go to sleep.